Good morning. My name is Diane Ehrenpreis, and I'd like to welcome you to Thomas Jefferson's Monticello. I'm the Associate Curator of Decorative Arts here at the Foundation, and we've been working on an exciting project. We're starting to tackle researching and reinterpreting and reinstalling the public spaces here at Monticello, and our initial project is the tea room. So let me tell you a little bit about this space and why it's so important to Monticello and to really the whole project of interpreting the first floor. So here we are at Monticello's tea room, which is always a treat to be able to step into. It's an incredibly beautiful space. It's extremely intimate, although it feels commodious because of this lofty ceiling. And it's unusual in a house in America at this time to have a room even called a tea room. I was very surprised in my research to not find any other space that I could identify with such a purpose-named function. And Jefferson, I think, was maybe inspired by these freestanding tea houses, which were popular in Europe and also in America, a place you would retire to in nature to have your tea and relax. And there were a few spaces in England, particularly at the spas and Bath, that had rooms called tea rooms. It's a chilly day here at Monticello. You might be able to see the leaves are mostly down outside, but that didn't mean that the family didn't continue to use this space. First of all, he had 2 layers of glazed doors so that you could have an air pocket, whether you were in the dining room to stay warm from the tea room, or if you were in here relaxing during the day or particularly in the evening, these could be closed to make it more comfortable. And despite having all the windows, which offered the glorious light, there are paneled shutters to mitigate the cold. And most excitingly, we have this amazing classical niche, which is just begging to have a stove, a German cast iron stove, reintroduced into this space. We know that Jefferson acquired one. We have amazing documentation from the German forge telling us exactly its columnar shape, its pedestal, and its urn finials. In this space, this would have been going on a day like today. There was a flue that went out, and we believe that it was a wood burner and that this wood itself had to be fed from the front, which gets us thinking about, well, who was in here? Who was invited to relax in this space, and who was in charge of making it function? Who fed that stove? Burl Colbert, the enslaved butler, would have been in this space before the family and guests adjourned here to set up the evening coffee, to clear away dishes. But otherwise, Jefferson himself would be in here, his daughter, grandchildren, important guests. We frequently point out Lafayette, but there were also many young gentlemen that came to learn from Jefferson, the great patriot and statesman. And it's a dynamic space that we used to show just dining in this space. But really what Jefferson intended was that this was a sitting room, that this was an intimate space where people could have conversation very much like a salon, like an intimate space that he might have known when he was living in Paris. So in working on the space, very excited to talk to our colleagues when we had an opportunity to sample all of the woodwork and the walls to better understand that we get the right decorative scheme in here. And we realized in sampling these brackets that they're original, they've never left the house, so we need to give them more love and attention. They're incredibly important survivors. And that the brackets themselves are plaster, molded plaster, and they were painted to match the terracotta finish of Jefferson's 4 original busts. What we also learned was that the wall decoration was a gray. It was a nice, rich gray. So picture terracotta art elements punctuating a gray wall with creamy trim. We wish we had the original busts, but we're excited to report that certainly 3 out of 4 of the original busts survived, perhaps 4. And they all were shipped to Boston in 1828, and 2 of the most important ones are at our sister institution, the Boston Athenaeum, even today. And that is a partnership that we're very grateful for and excited to kick off, to work with our curatorial colleagues at the Boston Athenaeum. Their busts of George Washington and the Marquis de Lafayette are considered treasures in their own collection. And we're starting to explore the idea of this partnership where we can scan those busts, we can talk about restoring them. We're going to conserve and restore the brackets, the walls. We're also having an exciting project of scanning our entablature and being able to share those downloads so that our public, perhaps they want a rosette to have in their own space or to use it as a teaching tool. There was an art installation beneath each bracket, and one of the brackets even has a little hook that survives. And Jefferson tells us that beneath each bust of one of these great American worthies, John Paul Jones, Ben Franklin, George Washington, and the Marquis de Lafayette, there was some kind of medallion of a Roman emperor about 3 inches big. And each one of those emperors were despicable. It was not only a didactic space where you might learn about good behavior and bad behavior, but it was also autobiographical. Immediately, Jefferson is encouraging you to think about good and bad government, a moral tale, as well as a place of repose. We know from a floor plan that Jefferson's granddaughter left us that there were 2 sofas, 2 almost love seats, one on each side of the tea room, one underneath the window, and one in this cozy spot under the stove I told you about. We know that at least one of these sofas survived. They would have been here in Jefferson's day, and they would have really set off this space as something forward. And speaking of the young democracy, we are so fortunate to have so many original objects. For a house museum to be able to really point to exact objects that were used in this space is remarkable and very exciting. One piece is this tea table. The family called it the Brescia marble table. It actually has this beautiful reddish patterned marble from Brescia, Italy. And Jefferson himself favored this table, as did the family. When he comes back from Paris, things like this table are being shipped to him, but he goes out and he acquires an entire set of dining furniture when he's living in New York. He acquires 10 of these mahogany shield back chairs that we think were probably made by Thomas Burling, but we know they're New York examples and that most of them were always used in this space. So we're looking forward to having them conserved and having the upholstery restored to its proper color and material. And we're working with our colleagues in archaeology to build up collections based on our sherds. So it's not just second guessing the types of ceramics here. So we're using real data-driven choices to refurnish the tea room. In addition to the curatorial work and the architectural history work that we're doing, we have called on our incredibly talented colleagues in our education department and education and visitor programming, and they have come up with a series of opportunities to offer, really to share this program, this project with our public, both people who may come to visit, but particularly people who can't come here, so that the public can watch and participate and share and ask us questions of why we're doing what we're doing. There'll be times where we will live stream while the work is going on. All of these things we're excited to add on to what might appear to be a traditional historic room reinstallation. Thinking about what we can accomplish and what we can offer our visitors, and not just visitors here in person, but visitors from afar. This project, it's limitless. It's exciting, it's dynamic. It would be groundbreaking to have this space the way Jefferson wanted. He wanted a dialogue. He wanted people to come in here, converse amongst themselves, but also be edified and challenged to think about things in a different way, to learn lessons that are important for our nation. And we think that through this project, we can build on that. We can build on that concept. We can invite people in. We have an opportunity to perhaps recirculate those lessons that he thought was so important.